This video we're going to replace a Hunter Douglas 2-inch or 2.5-inch LiteRise cordless lift assembly. So what I have pictured here is, this is the blind we're going to work on today. The tool selection is pretty simple. You need a Phillips head, needle nose, and a small hammer. The parts that they use here, you can see the lift assembly here. So this one has a beige or brown transmission adapter, two motors that are snapped together, and a motor adapter. It's a motor plate. So all the parts that are available for this system is a brown transmission or a white transmission. You have a transmission holder, and then you have a selection. It's an assortment of motors, and then this motor retainer. So you can see in this blind here we need two black motors. And what you're going to want to do is replace the progression as you see it in your shade. So this shade has a brown or beige transmission, so we're going to use that, and then it has two black motors. And again, you're going to have to replace. If it had a black and a gray, you would want to order a black and a gray, or a black and a red. You need to replace it with the exact same thing that you have. So let's put these parts aside, and for this we need a brown transmission adapter, two black motors, and a motor retainer plate. First step, inside here you'll notice this motor retainer plate has a Phillips head screw. So you want to loosen that. You want to loosen this transmission adapter plate screw. Take the end off the blind, just wiggle it off. Set this aside. Now, this whole lift assembly most likely isn't going to slide out very easily. So what I do is I grab this bar right here, this lift bar, and you want to tap this a little bit to get it to slide off the... I should also mention, my blind is all the way down. It's deployed. The blind broke, and I'll show you here in a minute what happened. But we slide this out, and if you look at this transmission, right here at the very end, you can see that that little string inside the transmission actually broke. And typically that's what happens. So even though it broke, the motor spun out too. So we're going to need to replace this whole assembly and rebuild it just as it is. So let's get started here with the new lift build. And you'll notice in your new transmission has an additional screw assembly here that'll hold it into the head rail, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But really what you want to do is basically take this screw that's from your old transmission adapter and put it in here. This just provides additional support. Now to build this, what you want to do is, a good thing to do before you even start is just snap a picture of it with your cell phone, so if you get interrupted and you can't build it, you have a reference on where you were at. So you snap this on just the way the old one was, and then what you do is you take this motor, and there's a square shaft, and there's a square shaft in the motor here, and you fit these two together, and then snap. You'll hear it snap together. There's a catch here and here. Now once we have this on, we still have our two transmission locks in here. These little pieces of metal, you want to keep them in. Now the next step is we need to take this motor stopper off. It's under tension, but it's not going to go anywhere. Put that aside. We take our next motor and line the shafts up like this, snap them together. Now we have our new assembly built. And what I usually do is I take this bottom transmission stopper off. Now what we want to do is put this motor plate on the back, but before we can do it, you'll see it won't fit because this stopper's here. So we want to take this off, ensuring that we still have one of these in the transmission. If you don't have it, actually tilt it up so you can get it out. That's the last step we're going to do. You take this piece off, wiggle it off. Now this transmission, this motor plate will fit on this motor, and you can see here it has a little indentation that actually clips into the motor, and then the back it snaps onto the bottom. So now what we want to do is feed this into, and these little guides here have to go in the notches in the headrail. Kind of push this thing in. And before we go all the way, if you want to look and see, this is a D rod. You see how it's a D shape, and this D rod's going to fit in there. So what we want to do is kind of turn this rod so that it'll match up with this transmission here. So you can tap this into place, get it close, and then kind of hand insert this rod, and then you can push this all the way in as far as it'll go. And then what we want to do is lock this into place. So now we took our old screw off our old transmission plate, kind of just snug that up. You want to snug this up here, this transmission adapter. Remember, these are plastic parts. You're just going to snug them. Now inside here in the headrail, you want to tighten this up too, so that there's tension, you know, it's pushing against the motor assembly, and this actually holds the thing in the headrail. And you can snug this up. If you snug it up too tight, it's just a thin piece of metal, you'll strip it. So the last step, you want to put this headrail piece back on. So we have our new motor assembly in, it's snugged up. Now what you want to do to engage it, another thing also, is you want to inspect here and make sure that this plastic cover here is on, it's snapped on to this here, this plastic cover. Sometimes they come off. You want to make sure that's snapped on here. You just want to inspect this headrail for any issues that might, you know, be causing any problems. You can see that the cord is bailed all the way off the lift roll. So now what we want to do is take this shade, we want to put some tension on it. So we're going to lower it all the way so that there's tension on it. And then what I do is I get my needle nose pliers and I take this transmission stop out. And once I take this out, it's going to engage all the tension on the thing. Now it's engaged, and you can see it's wanting to lift. So now what we do is we take our shade and lift it, check it, make sure it works up and down. Good to go here. So that is another thing I should mention too, is make sure that your slats are, see how they're open, they're perpendicular. You want to work on this shade so your slats are open and not closed. It's a pretty simple repair. It can be done in a matter of 5 minutes or so, and it'll give new life to your blinds. I should mention too that this old assembly now, you can't rewind these motors and use them. I highly recommend just replacing your whole assembly. You know, what comes with your assembly is a motor plate, but you can reuse that. But you want to get a new transmission adapter. These plastic pieces become brittle over time, and you wouldn't want this to fail. Thanks for watching.